Hey guys, this is Marui. Today we're going to be taking a look at a custom steel slide made for the Tokyo Marui MMP. So this is a slide that you can purchase from Boom Arms. It's called the Boom Arms Custom Steel MMP Slide. I think. I forget the exact name, but you can just find it on his website. It's a really sick looking slide. It's completely made of steel. The slide is steel, the barrel is steel, the iron sights are also made of steel. Very heavy, very hefty. Gives you a lot of kick once you get it to tune right. You do have to do a bit of fitment work, which we'll talk about later on, but this is just a really sick looking slide. So this slide was purchased by a customer of mine. He purchased it and then he purchased a frame and all the parts for it, so I can build a Salient Arms Tier 1 frame for him, which is exactly what I did. So I just basically stippled it with my stippling tool and just did all these kind of Salient Arm stippling. And also I did a comet cut for him on this side, because this Salient Arms Tier 1 MP also has a comet cut that looks like this. It reduces this area over here. You see how it rises over here? The Salient Arms Tier 1 MP actually completely removes that to make that comet cut over there. That was really tricky to do. I didn't do this using a mill. I did this using a Dremel tool. Is because I didn't know how far to take it with a mill. And since the frame is sort of thin, you have to be very careful. So this was very tricky to do. And as for the trigger undercut, I just had your traditional trigger undercut, and I also polished it. The reason why you polish it is because when you rest it on your middle finger, it's meant to be a little bit more comfortable. And I also did the trigger undercut, trigger guard cut over here. I also installed a Ready Fighter trigger, which I think you can also purchase from Boom Arms. I can't remember the exact cost of this. I didn't purchase this. Again, the customer purchased it. It's a really cool looking trigger, I will admit. I sort of wish they use pins instead of grub screws. Is because the real steel Salient Arms MMP uses pins, uses roll pins. I really hate the look of grub screws, but that was the only thing provided in the kit. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but it still looks nice. Like from a distance, you can't be that picky. But I guess I'm that picky, right? And as for the slide, so everyone knows what a Salient Arms MMP looks like, you know, with all the serrations, all the window cuts, the relief cuts on the left and right side as well. That reduces the profile of the slide and makes it lighter. And all the serrations are super deep, and all the markings are made very nicely. Super deep, super clean, as well as on this side as well. Same with the iron sights, as you can see. They look really nice, actually. However, there is a big complaint that I have, two big complaints. The very first big complaint is the machining marks. Can you see that on the sight there are a few machining marks over there? The camera's not picking them up, but there is a very large circle machining mark on the rear iron sight. And that's probably from the mill vibrating a little bit, or from the mill not being properly, not spinning properly. And when it comes to Hong Kong, whenever they use mills, it's a little bit like that all the time. When you go to China, they try to reduce that. Actually, when you mill anything, they tend to make those marks. But normally, when people try to get rid of those marks, they actually take the time to. When you're mixing something like a slide, normally people take the time to get rid of it. Unfortunately, in this case, it didn't get rid of it. So there is about 6 circles that I can see. For some odd reason, the camera's not picking it up. It's right there, right at the back of the Salient logo, which is a little bit weird. Oh, by the way, these two areas, they're not actual grub screws. They're just meant to look like grub screws. They're not actual screws. And their front sight fitment, oh, this is not a problem, by the way. The front sight fitment is actually loose, so what you have to do is that you have to super glue it. This is not a big deal. I'd rather do this than to use the crappy MMP clip that holds onto the front iron sight. I'd rather have it installed like this, like a 1911 or a high kappa. I'd rather have it slip onto the slide like that. I don't know why Detonator still forces me to use the clip. I think everyone should be using this system. Anyways, so that's it for the first problem. Now on to the second problem. The second problem has to do with the fitment of the slide. If you do not do fitment, your slide will not move. So when the customer first brought the slide over to me, he actually assembled most of what's in the slide already. But for some odd reason, after I did all the frame and everything, and after I moved everything here onto the nebula frame, the slide would not go into the chassis whatsoever. It literally would go up to like about here, and then it would jam up, and it won't even go in. It won't go in unless I hit it by force, and if I hit it by force, I won't be able to get it out. I almost couldn't get it out. I actually had to hammer it with a mallet to get it out. So the reason why that is because on the MMP, on this side over here, on the left side, and on the right side over here, there's a bit of a bump. So what happened is that the steel slide, physically won't go in unless you sand away those bumps. It also helps a little bit if you sand down the left and right a little bit, but even after you sand that down, the tolerance is still tight. Oops, my bad. Guide rod's not properly in place. So you see, even though I sanded the left and right a little bit, can you see that the tolerance is only by a little bit? It's only moving a little bit. It is actually very solid. I sort of understand why they did this, is because when you make a steel slide, people are paying this primarily for looks. So you should tighten up the tolerance a little bit, just so that the fitment will be a lot better. That's personally what I would do. So I'm glad whoever decided to make this did that. The up and down tolerance is also really tight. There's barely any movement. This movement that you can see right here, it's the minimum movement that it can move. Otherwise, you don't really hear much of the movement. Like this movement that you hear right here, mostly has to do with the outer barrel movement. But otherwise, this slide fitment is really tight. It literally won't go into the back. Another area that you have to look for is when you have to slide all the way back like this. So when you have to slide all the way back, what happened was that I found out that the front portion of this slide appears to be a little bit tight on the front portion of the frame. So these front portions over here, I had to sand down the left and right only these areas and these areas, because after extensive testing, I found out that this area was wearing out. The steel slide was actually wearing this area out. So that's how I identified that you had to sand down and modify these areas. I also sanded down the bottom side of this area so that it can move a little bit freer. Back then, when I first installed the slide, it won't even move. It won't even budge. It actually took me a good 1 hour to figure out that problem. It's because, for the life of God, I could not see why it was... Why is it getting stuck? I could not see why the slide was jamming up like crazy. Pissed me off like crazy, to tell the truth. Oh, my bad. This reminds me of the Nova slides, where it has a small problem going in. You have to position the barrel correctly, otherwise it won't go in. There we go. So the trick is to move the barrel a little bit upwards so it can actually slide into place. The reason why that happens is that if you look at the Nova kits, they actually do that sometimes. But I noticed that the cheaper kits, for some odd reason, they don't do that. I'm not entirely sure why. It doesn't make sense that Nova would use two different kinds of manufacturers, so I don't know. Anyways, that's pretty much it for the slide. So I'm going to test the FPS in a moment, but for now, this is how hard it kicks. So normally an MMP kicks a little bit already, but this, it sloshes really heavy. And the gas efficiency obviously goes down just because this is a steel slide, but man, the recoil is so much harder, like you won't believe it, like holy crap. This is so unpractical to use, but it's really cool to have. Anyways, let's test the FPS and end the video. Alright guys, so we're doing the FPS test with the Salient Arms Tier 1 MMP with the steel slide. So I'm not entirely sure what the FPS is like, to be honest with you. I haven't even tested it. I fired the pistol a whole bunch just to see if it will cycle. My primary job was just to get the pistol to cycle. I'm not expecting the gun to have great gas efficiency, but -1 rounds on the magazine, and I'm using Airsoft Surgeon Green gas. The temperature is around 26 degrees, so it's actually sort of hot. I would imagine the performance would degrade once I reach winter. By the way, the magazine goes into the nebula frame really stiff. If you use Tokyo Maruis and you ever bought garter frames, it feels exactly like that. It is really stiff going into the gun. So, let me see if I'm lined up with the box. 0.2 gram BBs. Firing. 289, 277, 282. It's funny, the FPS is increasing. Anyways. Oh, okay. Okay, so the FPS is dropping. It probably wasn't that consistent. I'm not entirely sure why it was saying 280 FPS for that long. Okay, so it's around 270 to 280 FPS, which I sort of expected from an MP. Yeah. Anyways, so that's pretty much it for the video. Yep. So yeah. So the overall build's actually a lot of fun. I actually had a lot of fun building this MMP, just because I'm a big. I don't know if you guys know, I'm a big fan of the MMP with the shorter slide. I don't like the 5-inch slide. I love this size. It almost feels like a compact pistol, but it's not. Right? I know it's not the full length, but it just feels a lot more. It feels like something that would be used for concealed carry. So that's the reason why I really like an MMP. My favorite one is probably the Innovative Gunfire Solutions, but that doesn't exist, so this is my next best favorite, right? The Salient Arms MMP, really cool. So, let me see how much gas there's left. Oh, you know what? There's still quite a bit of gas left. Oh, but it's not slide locking properly. There we go. It's dead. There we go. It's dead. So it was basically on the verge of dying. Okay, interesting. Very interesting. By the way, the whole entire MMP is stock. Everything in here is stock. There's nothing in here that has been modified, with the exception of the recoil spring. I didn't even do any polishing on the chassis. Right? I sanded the chassis on the areas that I told you. Otherwise, I actually didn't modify the slide by much. I mostly had to make sure the slide would move on its own. You have to make sure the slide can move on its own, otherwise your steel slide will not cycle. Okay, that's very important that you understand this. Whenever you're building steel slides for any Marui gun, you always have to make sure that you actually focus on cycling the gun first, because the second the gun doesn't cycle, sometimes you can develop problems like prematurely wearing out your chassis or stuff like that. I really hate the barrels when it does this. Anyways, this is the whole entire build. Pretty neat. Now, so the unfortunate thing is that I actually have to give it back to someone. Which I might not do. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think. Please feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. If you're in Hong Kong, if you want me to do a framework for you guys, please feel free to message me on my Facebook page. I will try to get back to you as fast as I can, although I have a fairly long waiting list. If you don't mind going on the waiting list, it's up to you. Anyways, peace guys, happy shooting, and thanks for watching.